Yeah, so I'd start. So my name is Sarah Barber. I'm from the Eastern Switzerland University of Applied Sciences. My colleague Yuri Markovsky is here. He's going to be co-leading this with me. And the idea is from this session is to talk about how we can launch a new RDA group on the topic of wind energy. This is the general plan. So we want to do an introduction of what we're doing and what the wind energy community is doing. And this is planned as a workshop, so don't fall asleep. The idea is that we have breakout groups. I think with the small numbers, we probably just have 2 groups of 3 people, which is fine. I'll tell you about that when we get to 12 o'clock, about what questions we want to ask. And then the idea would be for the groups to present what they found out and then to discuss any next steps. Because we haven't got that many people, I was just wondering, should we just do introductions of everyone? So, because we're going to be talking with each other quite a lot. Do you want to just quickly say your name and what you do, everyone? Maybe starting here?
Okay.
I mean you, yeah.
Okay. Hi, I'm Daniel. I'm from Germany, from the National Meteorology Institute. My touching point to wind energy is that we can measure components,
Okay.
and stuff like that.
Cool.
My name is Marta. I'm from Poland, living in Germany, working for the Data Science Institute of the German Aerospace Agency, together with my supervisor and colleague here. Yeah, so we are from the metadata management group, and the wind energy is one of the future topics for us, and we anticipate to use similar methods that we're using for other projects there.
Cool, great.
Yeah. Same affiliation, in Circo. Maybe to give a little more context, DLR has built a test wind energy park in Kundai, which was open, I think, in summer officially. And currently, it looks like we are tasked to describe the data measurements we make there.
Great. I also know that we do aerodynamic measurements on the rotor blades. It's one of the topics where we're looking to describe the metadata, and we wanted to measure on the wind farm actually, but ended up not working out because I think you need to do I wanted to do the first phase where they use their own measurements. But as far as I know, there are aerodynamic measurements being done or being planned for that. So that could be a really nice overlap with what we're doing. I'm not going to mention aerospace projects in this presentation. I should have been probably. But we can.
Maybe a small side note. Complementary to the actual physical wind park, there is a so-called digital wind park plan as well, where all this simulation stuff of motor blades, noise pollution, etc., belongs into, which should be validated with the actual physical wind park.
Does that have any connection to the digital twin project that they're doing in Hanover? There's some big digital twin. Maybe it's just the structures. There's some in Hanover, there's some big digital projects.
Consortium, I don't think so.
I think it's something to do with it.
So it might be, but I'm not aware of it.
Alright, great, thank you. We're doing quick introductions because we don't have many people, so we just start with
Marek from Prague Aerospace Institute. Actually, I'm not from this field, I'm RDA ambassador for material sciences and engineering. I am an open science officer in this institute, which is focusing not on wind energy, on solar energy, and I am helping my colleagues in the complex networks of solar energy analysis, which I believe may have some link to what you are planning. So that's the reason.
Great, thank you.
So I'm from RDA Europe, and the reason I'm here is supporting sort of a number of small grants and hopefully making it slightly less painful experience for people in most and I think in terms of right now, of course, interesting topic, but also in the next steps, our colleagues are running a project called RDA Tiger, which is providing support for the RDA working groups. And officially they started when the working group is accepted. In practice, they are very keen on helping writing the case statement and so on. So you end up with something that looks like a case statement for a working group, and I liaise with my colleagues and speed up the process of launching working.
My name is Juan from Colombia. I have nothing to do with energy.
Good.
I'm more into social and security services.
figure, trying to find out what people is using data. Just to increase the portfolio of different things.
Okay, thank you.
Eugenio from the German Aerospace Center. I'm working also in the Department of Network Energy Systems. So, and I'm working energy system analysis, but I also work actively in the development of the open radio ability. So that is the context I'm coming from.
Cool. Nice. All right, thank you. So let me get on with the first part. I just want to, what I'm going to do now is go through these points here. So I'm just going to tell you about the idea of this group, and then I'll tell you a little bit about wind energy, and then about IEA Wind Task 43, which is something that I lead and we're trying to connect to this group. Yuri is going to tell you about our new knowledge engineering for wind energy paper. We'll talk about some other data sharing efforts in the wind energy domain. And after that, we'll go to the group work. So the idea of this group is actually to build not necessarily a group of wind energy experts, but a group of fair data and knowledge engineering experts who can actually support IEA Wind Task 43. I'll tell you about them in a minute. In their mission to improve data sharing in wind energy, in particular in creating aligned ontologies for specific use cases, but also providing guidance on using RDA recommendations. So we're looking for data and knowledge engineering experts to work together with the wind energy experts who don't know much about the topic, right? So we're also looking for help for wind energy domain experts to define overlaps with other domains or industries. So like for aerospace or materials, it's some perfect examples that you've given. But also hopefully the idea is that people benefit themselves from interesting, relevant and interdisciplinary applications for their methods or their tools, or maybe even to test the adoption of different recommendations, take part in webinars, gain visibility. So that's the kind of the idea, and also learning from each other. So the aim today is to kind of decide what the group should do and where it should set its priorities, and also think about how the group could work. So that could be just any of your experience in collaboration, generally, even if you don't know much about wind energy or about RDA, I think would just be useful to just get some ideas. And also, how can we attract people to come to the group? Any questions about that? Make sense? So just quickly about wind energy, it's kind of important. In the EU, it's currently about 36%. Well, that's actually from 2020, so it's a bit old, but 36% of the energy needs. Interesting enough, worldwide, it's actually not that high. So this is the share of wind energy in the world from 2010 to 2022. Actually, it's only 7%. I was quite surprised by that, but I think it's because of, like, in China, there's still loads of coal, and in the US and stuff, and we maybe outside of Europe they're not quite as advanced. But there's these really big plans for wind energy to reach net zero. This graph here comes from the Global Wind Energy Council, and it's showing, first of all, in green here, new global installations per year, actual. And this green line is showing the actual trend. Obviously, that's not the trend of these 3 years because that's going down. But if you actually if you look further back, this is no, that's not true. The blue, the dark blue is the actual trend. But what they're actually planning in globally to reach net zero or to reach the 1.5 degree pathway is to expand this much. So if you look at 2030, you're actually on twice as much as continue as was before. This means that we need innovation, right? We need to make, for example, the cost of energy cheaper. We need to develop tools for designing very, very large wind turbines. We need to increase the digital maturity. We need to find solutions for grid integration. Maybe, if you have more than about 30% renewable energy in the grid, you end up getting quite a lot of stability problems, and you need storage solutions. Recycling is also a topic. Even though wind energy has got pretty low CO2 emissions, you still have a lot of waste, and you need to develop solutions for what do you do with the blades. Also, how do you consider the environment and the surroundings better? So there are lots of interesting topics which I could talk about much more, but I won't. But the point is that it's growing, but it needs to grow more. Wind energy has got a number of scientific challenges which were published in a paper in 2019 called The Grand Challenges in the Science of Wind Energy. This picture is supposed to be depicting that. So the first challenge is the atmosphere. So like working out how the wind and the turbulence and interacts with the turbine, and how they all, the wakes, so the area of wind behind the wind turbine, how they affect each other, especially in complex terrain. That means in the mountains, you end up getting lots of difficult thermal effects that you have to model. And the second one is the wind turbine itself. So looking at this turbine, like for example, how can you increase the efficiency of the blades? How can you add things onto the blades to make them reduce their noise? You have to really then understand the details of the aerodynamics, the materials, and the electrical side. That's a very interdisciplinary field. And then you have the third one, which is the plant and the grid. So that's all about, the grid integration topics, which I already talked about. What's really interesting about that is that you can kind of see from the picture, they cover multiple scales in space and time. So on one hand, you're looking at like global wind systems. On the other hand, you're looking at like some little turbulences which are going over the trailing edge of a blade, which could be on the scale of a couple of millimeters. If you want to just model what's happening there, you can't, because the scales are too wide apart. They're all interrelated, and you can't really separate these topics, right? Because the atmosphere, at the end of the day, affects the turbine, and that affects the plant and the grid. And there was also a load of other factors that since this paper was released, kind of people realized there's some things missing in this paper, like the social aspects, or getting people involved, the whole acceptance part, the whole effect on the environment. And because of this, it just means that combining, using, sharing multi-scale and interdisciplinary data is really important. At the same time, we're not very digitally mature. So we have this IEA Wind task. IEA is the International Energy Agency. They organize several different technology collaboration programs, which is just aiming to, actually partly to bring the US together with Europe, because you have this European funding and you have US funding. Quite often they don't talk. But it's supposed to be, it provides a little bit of funding for people to organize themselves into groups where they try to further the industry in certain topics. And so I lead this task called Task 43. The idea is we're trying to unlock the full value of wind energy through digital transformation. And so our mission is to act as a catalyst. We want to drive open collaboration within and beyond wind. We want to deliver different insights, recommendations, standards, and tools in the area of data, culture, and competition. The reason we've defined these three words here is because we wrote a paper recently called The Grand Challenges of Digitalization in Wind Energy. Stupidly, I didn't put a DOI on there, but I think if you Google it, you can find it. We basically reviewed the whole sector. We did lots of interviews, surveys, literature reviews, and we came to the conclusion that these three areas, so fair data structures, culture, so how do we actually interact with data, how do we bring people together with the data, and competition, how do we actually improve the collaboration and the competition between organizations in order to improve innovation. We decided that we came to the conclusion that these three topics are the key topics, which is why we now have in our mission the focus on these three things. So if we look at the data, first I'll just show you a picture of how maybe it's not really that relevant right now, but we have these three working groups who are looking at data, culture, and competition. On this side, we're trying to interact with industry as much as possible. Basically, that's a simple summary of what that right-hand side is trying to show. It's a bit difficult because digitalization means creating value from data, and like everybody uses data. So how do you decide which bit to focus on? And that's kind of one of the challenges we have, and we're trying to prioritize those topics as we speak. So this working group 1 is trying to address this first grand challenge of data. So the first thing we want to do is learn more about the topic. Let's say knowledge engineering, data, metadata because we came to the conclusion that we don't really understand many topics. We're not computer scientists, and we tend to run away from scary words like ontologies. And so we actually started hosting a webinar series where we just aim to get experts in and talk and learn. We also wrote a review paper, which Yuri is going to tell you about in a minute. We want to develop new vocabularies, ontologies, and schemas. We want to make sure they're aligned with existing things. We want to make sure that they're done according to the state-of-the-art recommendations and knowledge. We also want to look at digital twins. I think we heard about a digital twin already. We've submitted a proposal. We don't know if we've got it yet, but we want to work on knowledge graph-based digital twins using some of these ontologies that we're hopefully going to define. As well as that, we're trying to write a data maturity roadmap for the industry, because it can be quite complex and, as I said, difficult to know where to prioritize. So that's kind of running in parallel. Yeah, we have monthly meetings and more regular subgroup meetings for that. We just got the extension accepted. So this task has been running for 3 years. I've only been involved for the last year or so, or a bit less. And this extension is running for another 3 years. So this whole structure, this whole idea is basically just starting now with this extension. So this is the perfect time to get involved with other groups like an RDA group. Yeah, so that's that. Does anyone have any questions about what I said so far before Yuri takes over? Does it make sense? Yeah, okay, and I'll pass to you.
Okay, thank you. So as Sarah said, we recently submitted a preprint on arXiv. The paper is Knowledge Engineering for Wind Energy. So just not to bore you too much, just highlights of it. Basically 3 parts. One is too long didn't read of knowledge engineering for wind energy domain experts. So for people who deal with data modeling and ontologies and knowledge engineering, knows sometimes how difficult it is to explain to domain experts, like all the concepts, and how difficult sometimes it is to relate these things. So the idea was to, in a simple language, put all the basic concepts to people so that they know who to look for. They know, like, okay, we have to look for an ontologies, or we have to look for data modeling, or we have to look for a data steward for this specific task, so they don't get scared of terms like schema or SQL database or stuff like that. Then there is an overview of existing semantic artifacts specific to wind energy domain. I put an asterisk there because obviously we went through a couple cross domains or overlapping domains. For example, in material science, there was a knowledge base of laminar materials for wind turbine blades. So it obviously popped up in the review. We had to, but we didn't do an extensive review of all the related domains because that would be obviously impossible. And then finally we we give some recommendations for the future growth and development of wind energy digital ecosystem. So I'm saying it's a release trailer. What's here is not important. You can look in the paper. So for the first part, there was like we have things like, as I said, just terms and what they are and what are the use case ideas that people see. For example, the image on the left, they will be like, oh, I know what's going on in there. Like those things, RDF and OWL and RDFS, like I know what it is. Like, and when domain experts actually like read on existing on like semantic artifacts, existing ontologies, and they read a brief description, they're comfortable, like, oh, it's an application ontology, so I know what to expect more or less. So the second part, as I said, has a lot of the wind energy domain artifacts we all reviewed. I'm not gonna, you can look for them in the paper, but we found 20 wind energy specific artifacts that are like available, published. Obviously, we could not get into the industry ones. And then we went through 22 cross-domain and related domain artifacts. As you can probably see from this small preview, it's a small figure preview. We have quite a problem with adoption and with maintenance of these data models. So that brings to the last, probably most important slide and the point, the recommendations. So we structured our recommendation is these 3 main points. So one is organization and diversity, and I put it small because this is more of a domain expert and community topics that we have to organize as ourselves as a community, like perform a stakeholder analysis, look into, like, survey the actual domain. So this is very much domain experts. Then I go into productivity, where we have the topics of actually like generating these new semantic artifacts, having the cross-pollination, so talking to experts from related domains, talking from experts from domains that already did the process of digitalization much more, and are much more ahead. For example, like a biomed community, life sciences, they're obviously much more ahead. And then also information access, transparent decision making, making data available for not only for domain experts, but also for other communities, and automation. So, and the final and the most important that I was hoping to get the audience at RDA, and then I think that's what RDA group can actually help, is to bring people who can help with the points of maintenance and making the data models and ontology that we develop fair. So we were hoping to get people who have the knowledge, the expertise, and can provide us with probably some toolkits to actually make the communities that is developing these standards fair, and that they're maintained and following the best practices.
Okay. So everyone's read the paper already? How many pages is it? 45 or something? No. 30. Easy. I think it was the digitalization one that's 45 pages. Okay, and then just quickly, some other things that Task 43 and also interested in that didn't appear in the paper. I'm just going to talk about these 3 things. So there's a group that's just formed called TIM Wind, which is called Technical Information Management for the Wind Industry. And they want to create a common ground for documentation and reference designation requirements between the manufacturers and the operators in order to agree on the standards for the industry. And there's lots of companies involved in this. One of the things that we struggle with in Task 43 is kind of connecting the research world to these people who don't actually want to share data because they're very closed. So also any insights on overcoming problems like that would also be welcomed. We work together with a non-profit in the US called Enter Alliance, and they want to supply the industry, or the renewable energy industry, with a platform, let's say, for community development of open data source and standards. So they have they're quite new, but they've just released a technology stack with reference open source software for, well, actually they don't have that, do they? They said they want to have that, but they have some basic structure for open data. So they've released a vocabulary, what do they call it? A metadata tagging vocabulary for wind energy. Or what do they call it, Yuri?
Yeah, it's like a
control vocabulary, exactly. Yeah. But yeah, it's a basic thing. But the organization exists and wants to, its mission is kind of aligned with what we're trying to do. So, and it's in the US, so that's going to help us with collaboration with the US. Then we have a project called We Do Wind, which is actually initiated by me and my university. The idea behind this is to say, if you remember the 3 things from the digitalization paper I mentioned at the beginning, data, culture, competition, apart from the data framework and fair data part, we realize that this idea of culture is so important. Like culture means well, people don't want to share data because they're afraid or they think they're going to lose out, but they're not necessarily going to lose out. And also, let's say 90% of the people I asked if they want to share data just said no, and they don't see it on a spectrum. They're like, I ask you to share data, you think I mean I want you to share 100% of your data with everyone in the world all the time. And there's a massive spectrum between that and not sharing any data at all with anyone. And what we're trying to do is to try to explore this gray area and say, well, maybe there is some data you would be happy with releasing if you got a benefit. And the idea of We Do Wind is to say, okay, there's this win-win situation. So if you own a wind farm, you have data, but you also need to analyze this data. You need to have solutions for improving the performance or for optimizing the maintenance. For that, you need data science and data scientists. No company in the world has got enough data scientists to actually develop these models themselves and keep them state of the art at all times. So even large operators, they have a team of 30 people. It doesn't necessarily mean that they have the most up-to-date research in their portfolio. And then the smaller companies, they don't even have any resources to do anything except for having an Excel analysis. So the idea is that the asset owners who've got data, they share an agreed upon subset of their data, and they share that with a challenge. So they say, okay, I've got challenge X, for example. I'm trying to work out how to detect faults in my gearbox. I need a solution for that. And then we have this, we call it a framework. So the framework is a digital platform plus webinars that we organize. People can then, from all over the world, can then take part in these webinars. And the model developers, and that's often just researchers, they're really desperately looking for real data because there isn't any open data, or not much open data published. And so they get access to relevant data to train and validate their models, and the asset owners get the results. At the moment, this is an open thing, so it's not like a closed thing where the company gets access to the IP. It's more like just trying to promote open innovation. There are companies who are interested in that and who provide data for us. And so that's kind of the idea, that it's also accessible to anyone in the world, because, for example, IEA Task 43, your country has got to be a member of this technology collaboration program, which means they have to pay, and then you have to, there's all this admin related to it. The idea here is just to say, hey, you can just sign up now if you want. Go to wedowind.ch, sign up, you'll get invited. We're working on the funding, the long-term maintenance strategy for that, where the money comes from, still, let's say. But we've built up an ecosystem of, I think, going towards 400 people now worldwide and from many, many countries who are actively taking part in sharing data. So we have these different, we call them spaces. So we have a space run by someone from a UK company. We have a professor in the US who wrote a book on data science for wind energy. We have a Swiss company who's got structural health monitoring data. We had a large operator, EDP, with health monitoring data, another Swiss company here. And we have the European Academy of Wind Energy, who, well, I'll tell you about that in a minute, because I've got some more slides about that. And then I want to tell you quickly about the RDA grant that we had. And Matti, when he introduced himself, he said he's trying to support people with RDA grants. So I had a small RDA grant with the goal of creating and adopting a set of recommendations for improving interdisciplinary fair data sharing in wind energy. What we actually did is we took a We Do Wind challenge from this Swiss company, and we prepared the data according to the fair data guidelines, and we got the people to use the data and then try to carry out these challenges. So the challenge was to use structural health monitoring techniques, so operational modal analysis, identifying failure, identifying aerodynamic imbalance. So we applied this fair data maturity model if you're aware of this, it's just a thing, a model which is available, I think, in Excel, which is one of our feedbacks, that probably a model provided by RDA shouldn't be in Excel. But it's really useful because you go through all these indicators and you can assess how findable, accessible, interoperable, reusable are the data sets. So the left-hand side is before and the right-hand side is after. And we made some small improvements because it was just a small grant. We didn't spend a massive amount of time, but we went through and did various things which we can tell you about if you're interested. We're also going to hopefully publish a paper on that soon. But the result was that we made some suggestions for how to get from the left to the right with wind energy data, but also some suggestions for RDA for how this model can actually be improved for people who are really trying to adopt it in a application. And then what we also had after that was a EOSC Future use case grant, which we basically just did the same thing. So we formed this a community around the European Academy of Wind Energy, where we got a load of researchers who are operating wind turbines, who've got a load of data, which they're not doing anything with the data because they don't have time to prepare it in a nice way. So we used the grant to actually take the time to apply this fair data maturity model to the data. And then we published a load of new data sets, which are shown here. And then we've actually defined, or we're in the process of defining, 4 new challenges where we've got about 30 people signed up until now who should be actually using this data. And the idea is to build up a community and learn about this more and more and work on it. We just need to get more funding for doing it. So that's a summary of things that are going on. I'm going to ask you for questions in a minute because I want to tell you what the idea for the breakout groups is, and you might want to know something in order to answer the questions. Let me just read what I planned because maybe we can change it depending on who's here. So the idea was to think about what could an RDA group actually do, and how could it help, let's say, the wind energy community? Where should it set its priorities? And how could the group work together with an expert group like IEA Wind Task 43? So maybe you have experience where knowledge engineers have tried to work together with domain experts, where you can say, okay, this is a good practice, or this is what happens, this is what goes wrong. But also, like, how could we attract participants? So how do we actually get knowledge engineers or fair data experts to actually see an advantage with participating in a group like this? I'm wondering if we should extend that or change it based on the fact that you might not everyone might be able to answer these questions. Maybe we could add a question like, which overlaps do you see between wind energy and your area? And what would be interesting, what's the state in your area, and what would be interesting to do together? Could be an additional thing. Maybe I'll just write that in the presentation as an additional question. Now, does anyone have any questions or something they're not sure about before we start this? What is it, 12 o'clock? What time is it? It's 5 past, okay. I would suggest that we split you two and you two, just because you might have similar inputs to give. Should we do that? So we don't do 3 and 4, but we do. What? You're gonna pass, okay. So we do 3 and 3, and maybe you two, one of you two, just swap with each other, and then we have a. Yeah, should we do that? You can also talk about anything else and ask us any questions. We've basically got free time to talk about stuff. We can do that, yeah. Yeah, we can do that. It's fine. I mean, if you prefer that, usually my experience when it's four people and 3 people talk and the other people know, but I can make an effort to make sure that people feel included. We will do it like that.
From our experience in the Open Energy platform, Open Energy Technology, is that this subgroup of the knowledge engineer, like this overlap between knowledge engineer and energy, is a very small group. I would say it's like a very emerging thing that is happening. I think I can say that I know like 90% of the people doing this in Germany, but we are not a lot. So I think this is like an area for opportunity development. And I think it's necessary to have this kind of like joint skills, not always making this separation between like domain experts and knowledge engineering experts, but have these overlapping people who can do both. I think it's like something that has to be developed more, because especially when we are actively developing ontology, we notice that you cannot do without one of those. You need to have some knowledge how to develop an ontology, but also you have to have knowledge of the domain. And at least in the open ontology, what we notice is we have our scope is relatively large, although we are limiting it with our with the amount of domain experts we have. We are developing very slowly, I would say, because it's not only necessary to know about energy, but also know about how things have to make sense together in ontology, because this is very critical to make it sustainable.
I've got a question about that for me. So, wind energy people don't associate with energy. So, I mean, it sounds stupid, that, but if you're a wind energy expert, you go to a wind energy conference. There's 2 wind energy conferences that everybody goes to, and that's not an energy conference; it's a wind energy conference. And the energy conferences, like obviously, some wind energy people do go to these conferences, but the place to be, where all the community meets, is wind energy conference, right? And if you have an energy space or an energy ontology or an energy data standards, what I've seen is that the wind energy people don't go. I don't know who does go, but not the wind energy people. Or maybe you can say something about that. Like, do you have wind energy specific people in this network of energy experts? Or who are they? Like, well, if they're not wind energy people, are they just grid? Yeah, who are they?
Yeah, we actually don't have many energy people. Also, we have wind energy experts too, but I think the big majority is wind experts and solar energy experts, especially because we are coming from the aerospace engineering part, that we work a lot with satellite data and stuff like that. So it's kind of like we do like mostly solar prediction stuff. So it's kind of like more on the solar side we're working on. But our colleagues from Berlin, they also have energy experts in there, but it's just, you're right, it's not like our stronger stuff, I would say.
Yeah.
Maybe I can ask, what are the specific questions you want to know? How much differs solar energy data collection from wind energy data collection, if it is only in the small details, somewhere in a high granularity, then why to do it separately?
I mean, there are differences. So I'm not a solar engineering expert, but so wind energy, generally from every wind farm, but you have different life cycle stages, right? But if you're talking about operation, we have like 10-minute average machine data, which is in like every wind farm. Then you have additional data, where people put sensors on different locations, and you have high frequency data. So you might have a vibration on blade, and you might have the aerodynamics of the blade, you might have a high frequency vibration of the, I keep saying vibration, so it's basically just vibration measurements, and maybe in the future also aerodynamic measurements as well.
But this is already very far in granularity. This vibration is a specific issue which comes from vibration. I think the common thing is that you simply collect data from many instances and you want to share it, which is absolutely the same between solar energy and wind energy.
You take a step back to the plant level, for example, you're operating a plant, wind energy plant, you might be getting monthly energy into the grid, which you're probably getting the same for solar, I would guess. You're getting some sort of availability, some shutdown time, maybe some things to do with it. Like, so for how that question's answered obviously depends on how far you kind of zoom out. But yes, there will be some overlaps.
I would say there is huge overlap, little difference, as almost always is.
And that's something that you take into account when you're developing an autonomy in this aspect. Is what are the things that I'm trying to prescribe? And I think this is something that you already done with your discussion with experts. Is you say, okay, this is what I want to describe in my models. What do I need to describe? And I think the work of the knowledge engineer is to really collect this information properly and say, how can I organize this in a reasonable way?
But there is a lot of other stuff as well. So, like, for example, in the planning stage, where you're doing a lot of wind measurements, so that's probably got overlaps with what are meteorology areas. And then in the design, let's say wind farm design, wind turbine design, so the actual wind turbines themselves, that's obviously not the same as solar, right? You've got a rotating machine, but there probably overlaps between that and gas turbines, for example. Gas turbines are also rotating machines. But isn't that, it's just one of the difficulties I guess they're having is trying to work out that you have all these different overlaps, but what do you do with that? You go to all the different groups, like hundreds of different groups, and if there are 100 overlaps, you have to go to these groups.
But that's the thing we were considering a lot, like 3 years ago when we were selected to this RDA inventory was this. There's this diversity of knowledge that has to be considered in this. One of the key reasons that colleagues from the knowledge engineering part suggested that we really stick to upper level ontology, where you have this like very high level definitions that can help like things from different sources to like work together in harmonization when describing data.
So you're basically saying so one place to start would be to find the overlaps on a high level. So to say, let's take my wind farm operation at a high level, and then say what we need, what they do now, why is it similar to others, and then at least start there. We need to start somewhere. But then why would I choose operation? Like I'm talking about operation, but like planning. I suppose that's something the domain experts will decide. We don't decide. Is it planning on the operation or the end of life? The most important thing for us is we have to plan it first. And then we say, for example, operation, let's start at high level, look and see where there are overlaps first, what we could extend or improve on. Is that kind of the idea? Yes, your
so this eventually just concretizes entities. So when you are developing like a model, is this kind of this meditation what goes on what I'm defining is they concretizing like entities in an ontology or a model vocabulary, and this is kind of that there's like there's two worlds we work in here, like the world of definition and the world of operation. And then we faced this recently because we are starting this next month. This is the kickoff of this NFDI for energy in Germany, and this has a very strong focus on the cooperation with industry partners. And this is not only wind but also like general energy industry partners. And this is like the first challenge we are trying to face is that their internal models are industrial models. Like their data is operational data that they use for a completely different purpose that we use in research. So they are taking completely different languages, and our development in ontology has been completely focused on research. And we want to do claims about truth in research, and when people come to us, how can I use, for example, the common information model, which is used extensively in the industry, how can I map this to ontology? I have to always tell them you cannot just do that because they are completely different purposes applications. And I think having this purpose of the application of your models, it's I think the very first step you have to do. And are you trying to help research? Are you trying to help policy? Are you trying to help industry? Or all of them?
Yeah, we were just talking about this before we started the session. Like, if you're asking me as a person, as a researcher, I would say I want to focus on open research, but IEA Task Force 3 is supposed to focus on industry. And so then you actually want to connect with these industry groups. And you have exactly the problem. I mean, I've talked to a load of them. They have their own, if you're lucky, they have their own data models. They have different ones for each wind turbine, and it's a complete mess apparently. But they have their own stuff. They're not actually that interested in when we come and we say, well, let's make a knowledge graph, or let's define an aligned ontology, they don't really understand what that means, or why they should do that, and why they should make an effort to do it. But what they do understand is why their internal stuff should be somehow named the same between different groups in the same company, or maybe they have a specific company who they work together with, where they think, okay, that would be good. But they don't look at the big picture, they just look at their little world. So what I'm really interested in is trying to solve that. So
I think the first step I will do in this case is when I'm talking to the industries, not coming with our jargon, and we say, let's help you organize your data and make it more understandable in your whole environment. Because I think this is a problem ultimately what we're solving with this efforts, like making the data, what you say, that not just useful for this small expert environment, but make it like useful in a larger context in the industry.
The trouble is, if you ask them what's your pain, they don't. That's what they've done. In fact, they've done a survey about their pain points. They don't know what their pain points are going to be in the next 10 or 20 years necessarily. So they end up getting a difference between what they're trying to do today and what the long-term research solution could offer them. I find it very difficult to work out that problem. But maybe we get some other people. Maybe we can talk later as well. Maybe we can go through some other people. And either answers the questions or any input, like,
I can continue coming from an organization that's in the green industry, green standardization, green research. It's a challenge. Certainly, what's not working is we just say we have a good idea, we will focus on research, and it needs to use fellow our recommendations. This is a different. We have in Germany quite successful initiatives now, telling the story from the perspective of our quality infrastructure, so from the organizations working together to achieve regulation, testing, elements of quality. So basically, a domain where industry is interested in getting standards from recommendations that impact their business and that enables new business cases. So you have a good starting point that you say, okay, you work with RDA, it's more industrial standardization, or they are part even of the international quality infrastructure, as far as I know. And on the other hand, you have the search staff that you try to put together, so together both sides.
So what you're saying is a good way to, in your experience, a good way to do that would be to look at, you have your IAC systems,
coming to this point, such a good way to start with the industry is to sit together with them and say, what are actually the business cases for them that could emerge from providing the data to research or to data spaces. A term that's used with many meanings, I think, at this conference, data space. Industry is using this bit in the sense of data spaces via X. Data spaces, where they see new business opportunities, people also acting in these data spaces, providing services to analyze data. So questions to arise what research support you to create these new services. Just to let's say you have an attractive point for industry.
Because until now we've been asking them what they're like. We've been kind of doing it the way around, like what's painful for you today, rather than what do you see. I think looking at new business cases helps solve.
So what could be interesting for the connection to RDA or generally research could be exchange knowledge. What is actually the research able to do? What research is actually going on? Benefits, as you said, research on materials, planning on properties of wings. This is even bigger, so we even try to have a project with the climate community to get the this global climate and weather data
Yeah.
included, which is very important, for example, for wind pipeline. So probably also have a very big availability challenge here. About research data.
You need to think about wind models. I was just saying you before you plan a wind project, you measure every year and you have to extend it to 20 years, and the methods for doing that are terrible. But yeah, I mean, there are tools where people automatically download get the data and provide it to wind energy people. But maybe there could be business models related to that, like doing it more efficiently or getting more access to the recent data and stuff like that. I can imagine that being.
So questions for RDA BO create the landscape. What are actually the data spaces of are relevant to promote and facilitate research?
Yeah.
But I think it's a relevant. It's very.
That's why nobody's done it until now. That's why we're the crazy ones trying to do it. But that's what I mean. I think it's fun. It's good to have challenges, right? I hear from
So, I kind of got stuck with this sort of data culture competition.
Yes.
It's
Okay.
kind of like if you take the elephant metaphor, and the data is kind of like the task, this is the sharp thing. I mean, this sounds like a working group. You continue with what you already started. You can hit the ground running, looking into what are the data sources, what are the standards, how you do cross-post between them. And you can actually sort of define quite clear outcome out of this. And I think already the contact network of the people in this room will already sort of kind of scale up what you did in the context of the previous project. But then this sort of culture and competition, this sounds very much more like an interest group, and this would be broader in a way. And then we start to come to the common issues with the solar energy. And in a way, the cultural data sharing, I think the cultural issues are probably the same. The competition in a way, I mean, just looking from far away, I would think that, okay, you need to get the building permit, you need to get the buy-in from the community, you need to basically make the business case, and you need to be able to predict that when the electricity will be produced, at what price. So this is kind of course the business case, but then also probably, yeah, basically selling this idea to the community. And I think this would be, you can complete this in 18 months. It's more like a creation of maybe an interest group, and then using that as a sort of funnel input to the initially to the data working group, but then maybe sort of later on spinning off something that is more focused then to, let's say, confidentiality of the data in this. And I think you will have already input in that, but I think right now you're still much more focused in the way of capturing the data and what is the structure and so on.
I mean, the culture and competition thing I personally didn't really talk about because I was thinking probably incorrectly that the data part was the most important part, but actually the culture and competition part is, as you say, that's why there's going to be lots of overlap, because everyone's not having this experience in different sectors of trying to improve data sharing and trying to get people to understand why it's important and stuff. What I'm really interested actually in that, so oil and gas, apparently, shared data much better, or share data much better than the wind energy community, because, well, the current theory that I've gathered after talking to lots of people, it's not necessarily true, but it's what I've gathered, is that oil and gas, because it's so high risk, when you're also talking about people's lives and very, very big structures which are very expensive, and people don't want to carry the risk themselves, they're forced to work together to share the risk, and therefore they want to share data. But in the wind industry, they don't, because they don't need to. And I'm really interested in understanding that better and understanding if there are other areas, sectors where it's different, and understanding how industries who do share better actually manage to do that? If it really is a risk thing, or is it something else? Yeah.
I would say here is kind of similar risk, because you have to take it from a much bigger picture. There are moments when there is no sun, no wind, nothing. Yeah, no rain, or very little renewable energy, very limited. So if you do not have data from wind energy and solar energy and no other renewables, you cannot be prepared for this kind of blackout moment. That's super risky. We need data from all energy fields to create a complex picture to get rid of polluting parts of energy business. Without all the information, we cannot do it. It is not true that renewables are able all the time to provide enough energy. That's not true.
I'm really interested in this argument. I never thought about it like that. But do you think the person at company X who's responsible for saying yes or no to my question cares about that? They care about their company making money.
You cannot think in your small.
Yeah, exactly, but they do. You
Doesn't
can't.
matter. Tell them.
Tell them.
You will be on.
I'll tell them. Okay.
You will be on.
I want to interrupt.
Yeah.
Because of a lot of these questions are out of that this is so it's not data from the world to create this. There are not a lot of mechanisms in between that kind of ensure that this is happening, especially organizations in between agencies for the energy grids. We take a big part, so maybe another stakeholder group.
I mean, there's an industry organization called Wind Europe, and they have a digitalization working group which I've listened or participated in. There's some new EU legislation about having to share some data. I'm not quite sure what that is or what the status is, but they were talking about it once. And they spent all the meeting talking about how to get around it. So they're talking about there's this rule about being planned. You have to share a certain amount of data, but you can define something of data, sensitive data. So the only thing they were talking about is how to make sure all the data, the sensitive data, really gets protected, and how to deal with that. And that is a problem, right? So it's not just because there's a regulation. I mean, I agree that we have regulations, but then if they don't want to share their data, they spend all their time trying to work out how to get around the existing regulations. But yeah, I guess it's just different problems. But having the government,
And you have different players with different power on a political level. So regulation is there, it's a different level than research. The problem we always have with going for research in that domain. It's the traditional business.
but do you or anyone else, or does anyone like? Is it common, like this whole working with the government and trying to work your way around these regulations? Is that like
in clinical systems, when you speak about patient data, the government is immediately included.
Right,
and there's no way to go around it. And there are good use cases. You said there are confidential data. You have to anonymize it. There are again tools how to do it. And I'm not saying that they are mature enough to say that you just take it in No, not at all. But you are not starting on a green ground, on a fixed base. This is all influenced, and that's the strength of RDA. They know about it.
I actually started thinking about this sort of oil and gas. Just these anecdotes I heard about, if you, for example, you start a mine somewhere, you found copper somewhere, and it takes 20 years from the moment you start digging before the production starts, and the way you protect your investment is to basically buy and sell derivatives. So you say that's okay, because the price of the raw material will fluctuate. I think the difference here is that the copper we are talking about daily or monthly or yearly changes, but I think electricity prices they change by the minute. So I think it's kind of like this extreme case of eventually going into some kind of derivatives market to basically predict that, okay, in the end, you need to be able to produce the electricity and so on. So
Yeah.
Just to add some positive examples of the quite negatives, this could be also something positive. These public agencies are responsible to collect the data and serve the goods. They are of course also invested as part of data strategy, new data strategies to publish such data. So such agencies could be player who get the data from the companies, the energy creators, and so forth, and who are able to share. In Germany, it's like Bundesnetzagentur. Yeah. So, because the politics is already flipping that the public sectors are asked to provide public data, exactly for research.
So in wind energy, there's quite a lot of like wind atlases. So there's a global one, there's a European one, there's a Swiss one, which are public, which is supposed to be used for like national and regional planning. And so like in Switzerland, they have this map, and the idea is that you can go and look and see what the potential is. But it's quite a different topic, but it's really difficult because they're not that accurate. Especially in Switzerland, you have mountains and winds doing the crazy thing. You end up with a really inaccurate estimation, which gets into lots of trouble with the opposition because they don't trust you because the results are completely wrong. But there is that, and then there's also, as I was saying before, there's platforms where people can submit like. If you collect like monthly energy electricity production data from all the wind farms in Germany, that this thing exists in Germany already, you can create like an index which is an anonymized relative wind speed and relative energy production, which gets used to improve future planning. But actually, there's a company that does that, and they sell it. And I think in the US, the government does it. And so I've already been thinking about Switzerland like trying to do something like that. But we were saying you have to work with the government to do that because you've probably got some Bundesamt who want to be responsible for it, and how do you get around that? So I think that would be a really interesting use case. Also a not too difficult one because you're not involving all these. It's the manufacturing of the turbines is the problem. You don't want to share anything. If you just say, okay, we're not going to do anything now, we'll take something easier, that would definitely be an example.
Of course, there's always data on manufacturers who don't want to share the materials they use,
they don't want to share
construction sequence.
It's strange because I was on the material sciences conference, and there was also again big companies in Germany, and they were not very negative in sharing. Of course, there are some data which they cannot share. This is okay, but they were quite positive.
Yeah, so you have the wind turbine manufacturers, they sell their wind turbines to project developers who then build the project, and then they probably sell it to someone else who runs it and tries to make money from it. And the wind turbine manufacturers have agreements with the owners that they're not allowed to share the data for, because if you look at the 10-minute average operating data from a wind farm, you might possibly be able to see how the blade was designed. Somebody in China might be able to find out. And they're really sensitive about it. There's obviously other things, like, okay, if you have an operating wind farm and somebody finds out that it's not operating as well as it should be, then people are going to question how good you are. And there is stuff like that which I think is reasonable, but there's some completely unreasonable things. There was a wind farm owner in Switzerland who I invited to come to an event that I organised, which was called Wind Energy Innovation. This guy said to me, you cannot come to the event. If the media sees him at an innovation event, they'll think that the wind turbine is not running properly, the wind farm is not running properly. So yeah, that's kind of the level we were talking about. Any solutions to that? Can I hear from you two? very listening a lot.
I didn't want to interrupt that. I wrote down what I wanted to say. So I would like to address more the attracting participants and the overlap you mentioned.
Yeah.
And I agree with you that there should be a focus on what the benefit is for the groups involved and the common challenges. So I think that it was discussed here that there are multiple models, and I think that based on what I heard in the plenary here and also my own experience, obviously not in wind energy, but working together with the main experts, I think the unification is not realistic. So it will be more or working on top of that and finding the challenges they face. And there's a good chance that all the players will have similar challenges. There will be some big overlap between challenges in industry and in research. And this is where the common points could be for the different parties involved. And there was also here a discussion about finding people who would be in between domain experts and knowledge engineers. I think that this is also something that will probably not happen. Like, I mean, there are very few of those people. And in the direction of teaching or training the knowledge engineers in the domain, this is a really lengthy process, and I don't think that the knowledge engineers would actually want to invest the time. And the domain experts plus knowledge engineering, I mean, this is something that will not happen like they will actually be capable of doing this on their own, but we can definitely raise awareness of what that is. I know I understood that the community has some specific focus on limited number of conferences and meetings, so it sounds like a compact community to me. So not so diverse and completely separated. So there are some connection points when you could show people definitely what you did and what you benefited from that. Because I think something based on 100% recommendations, that's not going to work. And people would like, oh, nice recommendations. Where's the next slide? Yeah, so they would actually read this. And the meeting point for the domain experts and the knowledge engineers is the awareness in the domain experts community about the fact how this is important to do, and the introduction of the knowledge engineers to the challenges. And there will be plenty of common challenges between this particular domain and some other domains too. So
yeah.
I actually find people who actually did something similar you want to do, but it's a very completely different domain. And there was also here the point about focusing on data instead of this community and competition. I think that without this community and competition aspect, this is also not going to work. Like, I mean, lots of people don't want to hear about data at all. I mean, they have data and that's fine. And why would we discuss this? Yeah. So this community.
You never win energy people. Honestly, so this is really good feedback for me, really, because in the wind energy area, I've had massive difficulties pushing the point. So we did this. We wrote this paper. We did loads of interviews. We did a year of work. Came to the conclusion that culture and competition are also important. And the wind energy people are like that. The Department of Energy in the US does not want to fund this part. They want to fund the data part. Seriously. And it's because, well, as far as I can establish, engineers are scared of non-engineers. So in Switzerland, there's an interest group, a research group who are looking at energy, social sciences for the energy transition. Guess, in a room of 100 people, how many engineers are in that? And I don't even understand what they're saying half the time. And I'm like, who are these weird people talking about these weird things? Well, they don't have the same language. And trying to get, I don't know, trying to sometimes read them. It's very nice for me to just hear that you all see the topics interconnected. It's not just like, let's go to our engineering civilization and forget about the community. But you actually have to do both. But like, how to get hardcore engineers to realize that is something. It's really strange, actually, because they all take part in the international collaboration, which is actually somehow that, but it's something you name it. Yeah.
So the challenges can be actually surprisingly similar, and I think that's the main thing to show that
Yeah.
you really work with the same thing and you really struggle with the same problems. And the solution here is to actually find how to overcompensate those problems and between different groups and different stakeholders. And so this is, I think this would be like a starting point with that. Yeah, if you don't have the awareness of what others struggle with and what are the common points, there will be no way to any unification, because the unification would not be on the level of the models. I don't think that we'll all just decide, oh, this is fantastic, we'll just change everything in our company. They will need to have some strong argument, like this is the benefit, this is what you're gain if you actually do it, and this still not necessarily end with everybody using the same model for it.
No. So let me just check. I've written down. I've picked up everything you said. So the knowledge engineers need to understand the actual challenges, and so that we can identify common points between different domains. And the domain experts need to have increased awareness and understanding of knowledge engineering, but need to know what benefits would be of using it, otherwise the body is. And then I've put the cultural recognition here. We should find similar problems overlap in order to not be. Is that a good?
Yeah, I think that, as you said, the focusing on the problems is the solution in my opinion. I mean, people have problems, and if you find people having the same problems, you want to work with them. Yeah. So.
All right. You want to add to this conversation?
Yeah, I have something to say. I come from a completely different sector, again, social security. But the problems you're facing are the problems I'm facing in Colombia. No one wants to share data, regulation is a mess, government is so related. Anyway, I agree, you have to show your possible clients, users, what is it? The business case. And you have to incentivize sharing data and gaining quick wins, showing which are the quick wins. Because in business, people want to mobilize money very quick. So if you not invite them, incentivize them, share data by showing them quick wins in their business cases, maybe you are gonna gain something.
So just so I understand what you exactly mean by that. So for example, right, so this We Do Wind project, we had a company providing data, and we had 8 groups of people who provided new models for fault detection, and we compared how much money each fault detection tool would in a particular case, with a particular data set, would have saved the company on that one wind farm if they'd used that model, right?
Just an example of my business.
Right.
I go to a client and say, if you use my data, you will save this much more. It's an hypothesis. Share your data with me, and let's see if my hypothesis is right. This is right.
Yeah. The trouble is with doing that, the trouble is that I have with doing that, for this example, this is a true example. We have a paper where we've got the numbers. It's not really right. Like, it's so the models are applied to one case, and if you scale it up to other cases, it's not going to really work properly, and the assumptions made for the amount of money saved are also completely wrong. And my engineering mind just says to me, I cannot say that. But yeah, I guess I just need a business person to come and go over that.
There's a risk in business. You cannot particularize. You cannot find a particular solution for a client. Because you need to scale a solution. You only can scale a solution if you have a big amount of data.
Exactly.
The moment when you go to a client and say, this is my hypothesis for your benefit, it's because you have.
You already have enough data in order to do that. We, as part of this digitalization grand challenges paper, we had a presentation where we were saying we have this vicious cycle. The vicious cycle is we don't get access to data. Therefore, we can't demonstrate hypotheses. Like, we can't show that tool X saves you this amount of money. We don't have the data, and therefore, because we don't have the data, we can't dissuade you the benefits of that, and therefore you're around in a circle of not actually being able to get anywhere, and you somehow have to get from this vicious cycle to an innovative cycle where you actually get first data sets in order to be able to do a first analysis, in order to be able to show how that helped, and we're still stuck in that. That's what I'm trying to get out of by saying, okay, we did one case that shows some benefit, but we need to learn more now. Any ideas about how to get over that?
The reason why I'm here is really helping. I don't know.
So I've got one suggestion here. So you can actually help the companies to prepare their data so they will be protected to some degree from any malicious use. They are afraid, as I understood, from I don't know, being judged how inefficient they are or something like this. And you might actually ask for a limited number of data. So they might actually limit what they want to show you. So they will give you something, but they don't give you everything you want.
Yeah.
And this also can be done with some support of knowledge engineers, how to prepare the data in a way that it can be given to the outside without putting too much risk of the actual company.
Yeah. So prepare subsets like subsets of data safely and safely as a first step.
Actually, sounds a little bit like something, could be a subtopic of a working group. What is the research need anonymization of data specific to the wind energy? I mean, this would be in the scope of, this could be something that is very tangible and that could be addressed in the best sort of assessment today is that you need to do the at this and this in order to protect the identity of the operators and so on.
The thing is with that, right? So in We Do Wind, we actually did have one of the challenges we did and published was a company who provided us with anonymized data. We didn't use any guidelines or anything, but they just did some things. And then we ran the challenge and we realized we can't. It was about fault detection, and they basically removed some details about faults, and therefore the models didn't work properly. And after that, as a paper, we said these are recommendations on how to get data. When you anonymize them, check that you're not going to lose important information. And that important information is going to be different depending on the domain, right? So wind energy fault detection, it's going to be different. What you're allowed to remove and not is going to be different to what other domain. That's one of the really interesting things. Yeah.
I think this is one side of the point to, let's say, anonymize data to some extent. Another example you can see in medicine databases. Access to medicine databases like national databases in UK or Sweden, or we have many of them. It's really not open to everybody. You need to fulfill a trust requirement. Let's call it like this: be a physician or have a physician in your research team who's actually allowed to access and to evaluate which data can be used, how it's used. So in a sense, giving that to have trusted users of the data, trusted researchers. Not everybody can access up to business models that companies are trusted. Access committed by the owners of the data.
Yeah. That's interesting.
I think this thing about fair, where you always say that as open as possible and
as open as possible as close as necessary. So this maybe working group projects has this data. What are the rules that
Again, the good question could be how does it overlap with existing one kind of how different.
Two of these things, right? First of all, you're always just talking about data. So there is not the data. There is data on very different levels.
Yes.
As we said before, it was mentioned at least tentatively. We have data that they will never share, like regulation of the turbine itself. This is pretty much their business. They won't share it. There's other things like, say, grid information, which is already gathered by Bulletnet, for example, which is kind of open already. And it's just a matter of preparing the data. So that's one point.
Yeah.
The other point is you're always talking about pretty much really publishing data already, which ties in with the last point. So you will most likely convince people more if you have different levels of access. So it's not like the entire world already gets access, but this part here might be open grid data, and there's another section which you need to authenticate for, another thing where you might even have to sign some NDAs or whatever. Yeah, and a certain part of data you will only get access to if you have a joint project with a company to develop whatever.
The thing that I always wondered about that topic, using that example, yeah, I've had lots of people saying to me, I don't want to share data on Wind because the whole point of Wind is that it's open to everybody. I want to do it in a closed way. I want to choose who can have access or not. But lots of people say, well, they don't even want to do that. They just want to share data with the trusted one company or one university who they somehow trust because they live next door and speak the same language or whatever. And how I've always tried to use this argument of saying you need to do more than that because if you just have your one partner, you're not going to be able to. But like, if they only do have one partner or a very small number of partners, do they need to put it on some platform somewhere where access control because they're just doing what they did before and having some NDA and sending it and doing business as usual? Like, what is actually needed? Yeah.
I didn't want to interrupt you.
Sorry, I've lost
Just
my
before that came to me, you said there's different levels of access. You and the university to company collaboration. I think it's very important. I know many companies look like that. They want to have some research done for a university. And then an interesting question could be how could the RDA work support this university to get all this other data in that they use them as the company to perform research, provide quality research tools. Even if it's level 0 research, open science program,
yeah,
could this be a starting incentive? Again, so I know, well, I've been working with a lot of companies, doing a lot of research with companies who exactly work on that level. They work with one university for probably 10, 20 years. It's their main research agency, let's call it like this, and always on a bilateral basis. Person could be RDA, the open science, open data help these universities do better research together or with companies or bilateral.
How can we? So, what's the answer to that question?
So this could be a level 0 data share on a bilateral basis, where the research partners profit from the open data.
Sorry, one point of order, because
Yeah, I know.
we're running out of
I
time.
know. I want to make a summary in a second. I just want to quickly.
The summary is good, but also I think we need the email addresses to be in a collaborative note.
Okay, wait a minute. Let me just finish out this one. How can open data benefit researchers more than if they were just doing some bilateral things? I mean, I'm sure there's an easy use case for doing that. I mean, okay. So I just got a bit sidetracked there. So email. Can everyone give me their business card then? What do you want to do?
I think whatever works for you. I mean, there is in the session description on the RDA website, there is a link to the collaborative note, which is basically a Google document.
Right.
So and there is a section where you can put your name and affiliation and email.
That's it. Everyone just goes there and puts that down, and we'll know where to contact you afterwards. I can take a photo of this and send it to you. But just so quickly for me, so I've made a load of lists. It's kind of very unstructured data, right? It's just me writing down what I heard. What I usually do in situations like this is I just then go through it again and somehow try to structure it. But just generally, I've definitely got loads of information about what we could do or how we could approach this problem. Many ideas about how different overlaps we've got and how to focus on the common challenges. So for me, it's very useful. I hope it was also an interesting discussion for you. What I don't quite know is about, like, if we want to form a group, what's the next step? Or do we talk about that separately?
Well, I think that would be something that best discussed maybe after we work with the private team. So I think working group, you write a case statement. While we were discussing here, because funnily enough, there is the improving the agricultural data community of practice. And I think it's kind of interesting history in a way where you have this very broad initial thing and then you go into the interoperability of wheat data. That's one of the groups spun off by this community of practice. And I think the question is that the structure in a way that you have the, let's say, the culture and competition loop on a very broad basis, and then you would have the community of practice would act as an umbrella. But yeah, I think we need to discuss that maybe as a follow-up.
Okay, let's do that.
But I think, yeah, to me it sounded like there is a very concrete, clear questions in the way around the data part, in the way that could sort of form a statement for the working group.
Yeah, I mean, I have to have a think about all these topics, and like I said, somehow structure my thoughts, and then we can talk about them. All right. Well, if you want to hear from us ever again, then put your email message in that later, otherwise just disappear.
I'm also happy to add your details. Give me business class because it's like the RDA Europe part of the service. So whichever, if you don't have the shared note open, then I can type it in.
Right. Well, thank you for coming and being active. Now you can go off and relax for lunchtime now, isn't it?
Yeah.
Right. Well, thank you everyone, and see you all around.